So I recently just took and completed the basic motorcycle safety course in real life, basically more well known as the MSF to some, although the MSF is not exactly what I took, it was something like it, and it got me thinking, just how realistic are the motorcycles in GTA 5? Now I should mention, by no means am I a professional rider at all. I just barely started riding and wanted to make a video about this because I found it interesting. And if you do enjoy this video, please consider subscribing to my channel. It helps me in the YouTube algorithm to get recommended to more people so we can grow the channel, but now let's get started. First, let's look at the basic layout of the motorcycle, starting on the left side. There is indeed the left hand grip and clutch, which is good and is in the right position of course, but then the switches start to get a bit strange. There is the headlight switch and the high beam switch, which is fine, but they are two separate switches. Most motorcycles I've seen, there is only one headlight switch, with the default setting being on the bottom and the high beams being on top of the same switch, so one must be flicked on at all times. To separate the two is a bit odd, and I don't know of any motorcycles that have done this, and it seems like a rather waste of space and inefficient. Then below those two switches lies one big rectangular switch. It is unnamed, so I don't know what purpose it is supposed to serve, and in real life there was not a switch in this area anyways, and it also seems like quite a waste of space again with it being so big. Moving on down to the bottom left hand side of the motorcycle, we do have the left foot peg and the shifter in the right areas as well, so that's great. Then we have the fuel door, which doesn't have a lock on it, so apparently anyone can just come up to your bike and siphon your gas, which is nice. In real life, most bikes should have locks on their fuel doors, so this is a little bit unrealistic. Moving on to the gauges though, we only have the speedometer and tachometer. There isn't a light to indicate which gear you are in as well, but not all motorcycles have that, so I won't worry about it too much. Then we have the ignition. This is interesting to me because we never see our character put a key in there at all. In all cars we sit in the game, we can see the character turning the ignition to start the vehicle, but this isn't the case on a motorcycle. We kind of just flick the throttle and get going. And while we're here, I should mention that most motorcycles in GTA 5 rev way higher than the tag suggests. If it says 13,000, it's more like 16,000. Not super important, but it's cool to mention. Moving on to the right side of the motorcycle, we have the throttle and the front brake in the right spots of course. Then we have two switches. The engine cutoff switch, which is maybe a bit big but in the right spot regardless. Then we have the turn signal switch below it. This doesn't appear to be correct however, as the switch is just too big. The switch is more of a stub in real life and you push it left and right and then return to the middle, at which point you can push it to cancel the switch. The turn signal switch is also on the wrong side of the motorcycle. I don't know for sure though if all motorcycles past the 70s have the switch on the side, on this side, but in real life the turn signal switch was on the left hand grip, and during the lecture portion of the motorcycle training class that I took, I was told that all motorcycles have had the same controls in the same area since the 70s. So I don't know if this was a mistake or if some motorcycles really do have the turn signal switch here, but I don't know, but it's here regardless. Moving on to the bottom right side of the motorcycle, we have the right foot peg and rear brake, which are both in the right spots once again. But the rear brake appears to be shaped more like another peg, when in reality it would be a bit more flat so you can easily modulate the amount of pressure you place on it with your shoe, and riding shoes are a little bit clunky as well, a little bit big, so you really want to be able to modulate that pressure. A peg would be kind of difficult to modulate. This last one only applies to some bikes though. On some bikes, the exhaust is directly below the rear passenger, and this would probably make the area above really hot, especially on already hot days, as the exhaust would just heat up the panel above it. Not all bikes have it though, so it's not too big of a deal, and most bikes that do have it, it is a option on the bike, so it's not something that's there by default. And that is the layout of a basic GTA 5 motorcycle. Some motorcycles lack some switches and some switches are in different areas, but this is the basic layout of most bikes. I will say that some choppers in the game have weird peg layouts. Like some of them have a rear peg, but they can't carry passengers, and they will only have one peg for the rider on each side. But as we established, there are 4 pegs across both sides. So you can't shift gears or use the rear brake, or maybe you can and you just have to rest your foot on both. I'm not too sure if some choppers are set up like this in real life, but I definitely know that most bikes aren't. The right side rear foot peg is used on some choppers as a kickstart though, when in reality the kickstart would be its own thing and not be implemented into a foot peg where you rest your foot, so that was a little bit unrealistic as well. The rider cannot utilize these foot pegs on some bikes in GTA because they're spread way too far apart. Unless you wear a size 50 US shoe, I doubt you would be able to reach them both. And that's just a little bit unrealistic, but the fact of the matter. But now let's move on to the fun part of riding a motorcycle, which is actually riding it. First, let's talk about the riding posture of our character. Arm position depends on the person and motorcycle, so I won't get into that too much. Something I do appreciate though is how our character turns their head while turning the bike. In other words, they look into the turn, which is how we are taught in motorcycle training in real life as well. Unfortunately, they only do this at lower speeds, so we don't see it too often, but it's a very nice touch regardless, and I was surprised to see it. Now, I was really surprised to see this in GTA. When changing directions at high speeds, our character actually counter steers the bike. Now, counter steering while riding a motorcycle is basically just pushing forward on whichever hand grip you would like to change direction in. Basically, you want to go right, push forward on the right hand grip, and if you want to go left, push forward on the left hand grip. Directly turning the handlebars is called direct steering and is not done above road speeds on a motorcycle, as it can be dangerous and is just not proper. You counter steer and lean to the inside of the turn, which our character does flawlessly. However, at slower speeds below maybe 10 miles per hour, our character does have improper riding posture. When turning at slow speeds, our character still leans to the inside of the turn when you actually want to lean to the outside of the turn to balance the bike. Basically, weight is being placed somewhat equally on both sides even though you're still turning, allowing the bike to be easily maneuvered and not be tipped over. Something else that isn't quite accurate is when you slam on the brakes, the bike doesn't lean forward very much. If you're going 65 and you slam on the brakes, all of a sudden, the bike would probably do a stoppie and become unstable. You'd probably flip over in real life. To do a stoppie on purpose in GTA, you have to lean forward, which is accurate, but when stopping quickly, the bike barely leans forward without leaning forward yourself, actually inputting the movement on your controller or keyboard. It should automatically lean you forward, causing the stoppie to occur because that's just what would happen in real life. But Rockstar didn't do that. While riding, our character also never touches any controls, never shifts, never touches the clutch, never uses the rear brake, which is all quite unfortunate. Rockstar probably didn't allow our character to do this, as they would have had to make multiple animations for all this. They weren't trying to do that, and they were just trying to push GTA 5 out, so it sucks, but it is what it is. Our character also never puts down the kickstand when dismounting the motorcycle, just another little thing, but something that slightly irritated me. Ending the riding portion off on a good note is the fact that our character plants their left foot onto the ground when coming to a stop. This is proper and the way it is taught in motorcycle training, as your right foot should be using the rear brake, leaving only the left foot available to be planted at a stop. You're also supposed to stop in first gear, but our character doesn't have a shift animation, so we can't confirm that they do. Overall, GTA 5 did a great job at making motorcycles and making them rather realistic as well. More importantly, it improves on the terrible motorcycle physics of GTA 4, which was absolutely terrible in my opinion. The bikes were way too loose and way too vague feeling, and straight up just allowed you to do stuff that isn't possible on a motorcycle. The variety of motorcycles in GTA 5 is also rather abundant. There are a ton of choppers, sport bikes, and dirt bikes, but unfortunately Rockstar removed a lot of them when they removed the 200 some vehicles from the websites, which always boggled me because they literally dedicated an entire update to motorcycles and then they just went and deleted over half of them. So that sucks. But I would give the motorcycles an 8 out of 10 in terms of realism. Not the greatest, but some parts really did surprise me, particularly our character looking into the turn at lower speeds. And if you did enjoy this video, please consider subscribing and leaving a like. It really does help out my channel. You may think it doesn't, but it really does when everyone does it, and I appreciate everyone who does. And if you'd like to be like Byron here, you can also become a channel member and get a custom license plate on one of my vehicles in GTA Online by simply subscribing and pressing the join button. And that is all, everyone. Have a great day or night or evening, and I'll see you all later. Goodbye.